Good evening. Hello, it's Sharona. You are watching The Extra Point. We usually come to you live every Friday night, but this is a special week. We're having a two-night training camp preview special. We cover the AFC South and the NFC South. Tonight is the AFC South training camp preview show. I'm really excited to be joined by some other people who cover the division. Our guy Manny could not join it. Our Texans guy could not join. Unfortunately, he had a family emergency. So I'm going to play the Texans general manager, the Texans person, which is fine because the Texans have a lot of players that I like. And besides, we get to kind of trash the Texans a little bit, and it's all Manny's fault. So, just kidding. But we're going to go ahead and bring everybody in and let them introduce themselves and tell you guys who they are and where you can find them. I'm going to start with my cohort on Wednesday nights. I'm going for two with Zach and Sharona. Zach, tell everybody where they can find you, who you are, and you need to shout out you've got a new gig.
Hi, everybody. My name is Zach, and the South will rise again, and that I mean the AFC South. Hi, I am Zach _Law.
Zach is a big T-Rack fan.
Yeah, well,
in case you can't tell, Zach is a big T-Rack fan.
He's probably the 13th best player in the Titans roster right now, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyway, yeah, usually you can find me on zachlawonline.com, but now I am writing for fantasysports.org. Be covering the fantasy industry, continuing my Ask Your Fantasy Football Expert series, along with a lot of other nonsense. And, of course, every week do the Hangout with Sharona so we can talk Titans and football and, yeah, occasionally pets. So that's how we do it.
Your kitty cats didn't make an appearance last night. I was a little bit disappointed.
They're a little sleepy right now, but, I'll probably take this hat off because it's really warm in here. But anyway,
yeah,
Zach_Law on Twitter, that's where you find me.
Zach knows. I turned my air off because it's got a poltergeist. It's kind of funny that Zach made the poltergeist comment earlier because sometimes when it kicks on, the lights blink and you're like, whoa, what's going on? So, Chris, why don't you come in and tell everybody who you are and where they can find you?
Yep, my name's Chris Heil. I am on Twitter at @TheGrizzlyBeard. I write and podcast for BigPigskin.com, and I run a podcast with my co-host called the 3 and Out Podcast. So that's what I have going on for me.
Hey, Chris, I am in one of the Fake Pigskins Fantasy League. Are you in that league? Do you know?
I don't believe so.
Okay. All right. Well, it was a startup dynasty draft league with the longest draft in the history of fantasy football. I mean, it went on for weeks. I didn't think and I messed up and drafted all of my had all of my slots filled and had 2 picks at the end. That I was like, well, it won't let me pick anybody. So, hi everybody. But yeah, I'm excited to be doing some stuff with those guys. A good group of guys over there, and I'm excited to have you. Your first time on my show, and I'm really excited to have you on. Brad, you've been on my show before, and so I'm happy to have you back. Tell everybody where they can find you and who you are.
Really, the only way to find me right now is Twitter. I'm California Jag and also Jaguars blog on Twitter. I'm not really writing anywhere right now. My name is Brad. I have written for Bleacher Report in the past. Let's read it. Turn it off. I've Bleacher Report in the past. I've also written for Big Cat Country as well, so I've done the SB Nation Bleacher Report crossover thing. We also ran a blog for a year called Jaguars Blog that was part of the network started by Chris Hansen, who's a Bleacher Report AFC West correspondent. He started Raiders Blog and was able to get in with somebody in a bunch of domains, so we had that for a year. That was fun. But as of right now, I'm pretty much just writing stuff on my phone that sends through my Twitter account.
Well, Jaguars Twitter is always a lot of fun, and so if you haven't checked out Jaguars Twitter, you definitely need to do that. Extremely funny group of fans who populate that portion of Twitter. I would not recommend, however, that you mess with them because Duval can get pretty riotous against people who want to mess with the Jaguars. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. This is the training camp preview show. We're going to go around the division and talk about training camps are started. I don't believe I know the Colts. I know reported today. The Titans reported today. They report tomorrow. They start Saturday. And I don't know, when do the Jags report?
I am honestly not sure. I'm a little off, and it doesn't help that I'm all the way across the country, so I don't get that.
Yeah, you're over there in that godforsaken place we call California. So, I've got that information in an article that I put on the website, National Gridiron Network, which, by the way, and I should mention this show is produced by National Gridiron Network, www.nationalgridironnetwork.com. A lot of great, exciting things going on there, so you need to jump on there and check it out. And you can check out all the things that I write and say about the Titans and the AFC South there. So, and you'll be able to catch this show there. We're going to post this show there as well. Where teams are reporting, the Bills have already started. The Giants have started. They started a little bit early. Way up there. Those Yankees start a little bit early. The heat has been a little bit of a factor. You have to think that it's going to be a factor down here in the South, where you've got the Titans in Tennessee, the Jaguars in Florida, the Texans in Texas, obviously, and the Colts in Indianapolis, kind of a little bit maybe on the border. But Chris, what is the weather like in Indianapolis right now?
It's actually beautiful today. I don't know the exact temperature, but I'd say it's like mid-70s to 80s.
Oh, that is nice.
It's perfect. You could wear shorts and maybe a sweatshirt if you wanted, a long-sleeve shirt, but no, it's beautiful. I
want to switch with you. Today. You come down here to Tennessee in this 90-degree humidity, and I'll hang out up there and watch Andrew Luck throw bombs to Dante Moncrief. Anyway, we're going to get to you in a minute. Zach, let's talk a little bit about the Titans. We talk about the Titans a lot, and we've talked about the Titans. We joke, but obviously injury concerns about Jake Locker. We're all praying that he doesn't injure himself walking out onto the football field. What are your expectations for Jake Locker this year?
Let me get the power of T-Rack to help me with this. It's almost like the Magic 8 Ball. T-Rack, tell me, what will Locker do this year? Jake Locker really needs to perform because the Titans' backup quarterbacks have had a bad offseason. That's a good one. I mean,
I've got one of those too.
We have Charlie Whitehurst apparently losing an arm wrestling match with a punter, and then Zach Mettenberger. Let's not even talk about his own offseason issues, and he gets punched in the face by an Alabama fan.
Roll Tide.
Or by Taylor Lewan, who knows? Somebody. So, yeah, there's really a lot riding on them because last year Phil Rivers kind of had a renaissance, return to being a good quarterback was Mr. Wiz. Sorry. So I really need him to be the guy. They've been talking him up, and I think they've been talking him up because they want him to feel good and get ready to go and be the guy and hopefully hand the ball off a lot. So, yeah, we need a lot out of Mr. Locker this year.
I have prevented Zach from referring to Ken Wisenhunt as the Wizinator. He tried to do that last night, and I was like, no, you do not get to do that. We are not calling him that. That is not going to happen. It's kind of curious, and I understand why. Tyler Wilson just is an afterthought anymore. Nobody ever mentions him. And we really, I talk about him because Zach knows that I like Tyler Wilson. I thought he was a tremendous talent coming out of Arkansas. A really weird situation with him in Oakland, but I mean we're talking Oakland, so and their quarterback situation was weird last year and a little bit odd this year. Although you have to like the drafting of I'm going to not call him David Carr because I like to call him David Carr, but Derek Carr. The younger Carr brother.
The other Carr.
The other Carr, right? Yeah. So. Yeah, the Titans are only going to carry 2, maybe 3 quarterbacks. You're probably 3 when you consider Jake Locker's injury history, although I just hate that thought. How many quarterbacks do you think they'll carry this year?
Well, they'll probably keep Mettenberger unless for some reason they can figure out a way to put him on like injured reserve. But I think Tyler Wilson just doesn't have that great of an arm strength. And hey, if you get cut by the Raiders, considering what they put at quarterback last year, you might just not have the NFL skills. And it really took he was on the practice squad for a few weeks before the Titans signed him. So usually if you're a quarterback with any skill at all, you're going to get picked up. Although there's always trusty Rusty, Rusty Smith. He's waiting. He's waiting for that phone call from the Titans. So maybe he'll make an appearance later in the year. But you can't be too excited about Whitehurst. You can't be maybe a little excited about Locker. He's good. He was good last year when the Titans D was strong on that first quarter of the season. But yeah, once he got hurt, it all fell apart. So
yeah, once he had that first injury, it really was. It really did sort of tend to taper off from there. Looked good when he was healthy, but that is sort of the story of Jake Locker's career, not just in the NFL, but in college as well. We will see. I have spent a lot of time watching film of Zach Mettenberger the last couple of days because I'm finishing up my draft series, and he, being the last pick, is the final one. You would think that they would want to find a way to keep him on the roster, but if they keep 3 quarterbacks, they're going to have to go light on another position. What do you see being the big training camp battles this year?
Well, I think it's obviously who's going to take over for Alteron Werner at that second cornerback spot. We got Levy, who's the third-round pick last year at UConn, noted defensive stronghold. The NFL just goes to UConn for defensive guys every year. You can't get too much of it. Cody Sensabaugh, who has a name Cody, so people in Tennessee probably like that. Went to Clemson, played the nickel last year, so he could have a shot at that. And then the perpetually fast yet never quite reaching his potential Tommy Campbell, who was kind of the favorite to be that second corner last year and then did pretty much nothing. So, he's probably just a special teams guy. So that's the main one. Of course, there's the linebacker spots because they're switching to a 3-4. Who's going to play linebacker, especially that inside spot? Because you got Zach Brown, Mosey, Fuku, you got the ghost of Colin McCarthy. And it seems like they have 27 linebackers. Injury. Yeah, I know. Yeah. I was sad because I had him in my Dynasty League, and he was really good for a few weeks his rookie year, and then he just hasn't done anything. So I had to say sayonara.
I think you have to add defensive line to that discussion. They have got like a gazillion defensive linemen on this roster. How many are they going to keep? Who's going to play where? What? You've got guys like who were looking to be pretty good in the 4-3 base that they were running. Mike Martin. I'm talking about younger guys who were developing. Mike Martin. Where does Carl Klug fit in? Jarrell Casey, obviously, a very good defensive lineman in the 4-3. What's going to happen with him in the 3-4? How is he going to perform? A lot of questions surrounding the Titans this year. Brad, what do you think? What outside of Nash Vegas, the Titans fan base, what are the views regarding the Titans, Jake Locker, and their move toward this new hybrid defense?
Well, I can say that the main thing about Tennessee for me is that they confuse the heck out of me. I don't know what the plan is exactly, because it seems like some of the moves they do, they just do them for the sake of doing them. The hybrid defense thing seems kind of weird because they had solid personnel for the front seven of 4-3. I mean, Casey's a monster. Carl Klug was a really good pass rushing inside man. I mean, interior pass rush is the best way to keep pressure on quarterback, and they already had that set up well. And then switching to a 3-4 look, I mean, unless it's a certain type of 3-4 where you're expecting your defensive linemen to penetrate, most of the 3-4 looks end up with the 3 defensive linemen just holding off blockers and letting the other linebackers make all the plays. So, I mean, you're kind of taking Jarrell Casey and Carl Klug and Mike Martin away from their strengths if you're asking them to just hold blockers up.
Yeah.
I also didn't quite the Taylor Lewan pick seemed very similar to Jacksonville taking Jokel last year, where you have two decent tackles already, and it's like, what are you doing with this extra tackle? So in Tennessee's case, I think it was preparation. Didn't they cut Stewart or Stewart's
Yeah.
leaving? So you're just replacing a good player with another good player, and while that's not a terrible thing to use a first-round pick on, it seems like the best thing to use a first-round pick on would be to address an area of weakness or get a player that's going to be an upgrade on something that you already have,
Yeah.
and that's like a lateral move to me. I know personally Jake Locker seems like more of one of those fantasy sleeper quarterbacks than he does a legit NFL starter. We in Jacksonville are happy that Tennessee continues to trot him out there because I'm not impressed with his game. He's definitely better than Blake Gabbert, but that's not saying a whole lot. He's definitely better than Ryan.
Do you think that he's better than Chad Henne?
I not like Chad Henne very much, and yet that's still pretty close for me. That says a lot about what I'm not super impressed. Sorry, Mike.
All right, Chris, what do you think?
With Locker's game so far, but part of that is that he hasn't really stayed on the field, and it's hard to impress anybody if you can't stay healthy, and it's hard to get in the flow of offense and get in a rhythm and all that if you can't stay off the sideline. So, I mean, maybe I know he's got talent. I remember reading an article by what was that guy's name? Dave something. He was an ex-49er scout and Rams scout, and he had written this huge write-up right after the Gabbert draft, and he was in love with Kaepernick and Locker, and he hated Gabbert, and everybody remembers how much he hated Gabbert and how much he loved Kaepernick, but I remember he had said Jake Locker reminded him of Brett Favre. So, I mean, he's obviously got skills. It's just a matter of can he put it together, can he stay on the field. I'm not optimistic, which makes me happy as a rival fan, but I'm not sure what's going to happen there.
Yeah, and it's hard to gauge his skill set when he only plays like 6 games a year, right? I mean, it's hard to get a feel for what he can do. Chris, what do you think?
Oh.
Uh-oh. Chris? Chris, I think your sound's gone. Let's see here.
That's a strong take, though.
Hello?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay, all right. I like Jake Locker as a football player. I don't like him as a fantasy quarterback by any means. I actually liked Ryan Fitzpatrick more of a fantasy quarterback. I thought that he was able to be a lot more efficient on the field, and he was more of a safe player. He would target players that were not as deep down the field as Jake Locker's not afraid to throw the ball down the field more. But with that being said, I do love that Jake Locker is able to extend the play with his feet. He needs to put even 12 games together for us so we can really get a good feel of what he's capable of. And I think Tennessee wants to see that also to really understand if he's their option or not. They get to see him in short amounts in practice, and they just need to get that full 12 to 16 games in there to see if he can really carry the team and be the leader that they want. So with him, I'm still more undecided, but I don't want to say that I've written him off completely.
Yeah, it's obviously a big year for him. Who knows what's going to happen? But if I think from anyone's perspective, if Jake Locker goes down or for whatever reason isn't performing, is underperforming, and they have to turn to one of their backup quarterbacks, well, they're not going to be probably very competitive in the division. So, I guess that that's probably the big thing. Chris, I'm going to go ahead and stick with you because we want to move on to the Colts. The Colts certainly don't have the Colts certainly don't have an issue at quarterback. They were able to snag Andrew Luck with the first-round draft pick back in 2011, right?
Sounds right.
Yeah, and really, probably the best draft pick that Ryan Grigson has made in his tenure as the Colts general manager. I want to get your thoughts on Ryan Grigson and his draft this year.
Um, ugh. The draft was interesting. I'm trying to think exactly how to word this because it wasn't as aggressive as they've been in the past as far as loading up on offense or loading up in a certain area. It was just more of a neutral, like they're just kind of putting in different parts and just had an okay overall draft. I don't think that it was a slam dunk by any means, but as far as the draft goes, I didn't, I'm not a I cover a lot of Colts things, and I'm not a huge Colts fan, but I think they did good. And from what I hear around the area, Colts fans were pretty happy with how the team's moving forward, and they really think they have a shot this year.
Well, I think in a weak division like the AFC South right now, they should be. The Colts definitely should be considered to the favorites. I really like the Dante Moncrief draft selection. I thought that they very much got a steal. I think he was like their third round draft pick. I was watching. Oh, I should mention the Colts did start today because I just remembered that people were tweeting about what was going on, and one of the things to come out of today was that Derek Rogers was dropping passes, which is obviously not good for him. He is a guy who, made some plays last year, really needs to make a lot of good plays this year. Where do you see the Colts training camp battles coming down to?
Well, no one is real familiar with the Colts training camp. One funny thing to always see is how Reggie Wayne shows up to training camp. Every year he has some new, different outfit. This year he showed up in an Indy car and had a Colts helmet, different things like that. So that's something neat. He showed up in a helicopter one year. He showed up in
a limousine. Yeah.
It's really cool to see that. But as far as battles go, there's a lot of different battles going on for the Colts. The biggest one, I think, is the running back situation. Mm-hmm. Everyone's writing Trent Richardson as the favorite, but how many carries is he really going to get? How many touches will he get is another issue. Because Ahmad Bradshaw is still there. Vic Ballard had the ACL tear, or LCL. He tore his knee, and so, he's still going to have some type of timeshare, and so will Ahmad Bradshaw. So they have that going on. And then, additionally, they had the defensive end, Robert Mathis, who's been suspended a couple games. So they have the defensive end battle that's going on, and they might just have a rotation going there. So, there's a lot to look for in a team that is so certain to make the playoffs.
Yeah, the other things that were noted from the Colts camp today was that Robert Mathis was taking second team reps, and Bjorn Warner was taking first team reps, which is not surprising when you consider that Mathis is going to miss the first 4 games. They've really got to get a good second year from last year's first round draft pick, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. They can't afford to drop really any games, and they need that pressure on the quarterback for the defense to go. Their strongest part of their defense is their defensive line, or their defensive ends, outside linebackers, however you want to label them. But that is their strongest point, and they need that to be able to win each game. They're not going to win games in shootouts. They need some type of defense stance, because they do play. I think they play the Broncos. It might be the first game of the year. So right there, they need their defense to step up.
Yeah, they really do. I know that they play the Jags. Don't they play the Jags like the 4th game? I believe it is. So they start their division play pretty early. So they've got to hit the ground running. What do you think about Vic Ballard? I've heard various opinions about him.
I actually like him. I think he's a very good downhill running back. I wouldn't be surprised if he maybe takes over as the goal line back for them either.
That would not shock me either.
No, I think a lot of people kind of anticipate that, and especially in fantasy value, you have to look at that as far as having Trent Richardson or him. But I don't think he's going to have a ton of carries. I can imagine maybe 3 to 5 carries a game, maybe 20 to 30 yards, and then possibly that touchdown. So he's not going to have huge numbers, but he's going to be kind of that rock core guy where they do depend on him a lot, especially in the red zone.
At his age, can Ahmad Bradshaw come back and be a productive running back?
Well, with as many injuries as he's had, I would like to say probably not. But I'm very hopeful for people, and I don't wish to have injuries on anyone. So
Right.
I would
And
say
I like him. I've always liked Ahmad Bradshaw. You know, I think that he's a pretty cool guy, don't you?
yeah. I mean, he's never said anything negative about teams, and I mean, he had to play under Tom Coughlin, and that's pretty tough sometimes. So um, I think that he has a chance to go out there and split carries with Trent Richardson, but I'm not really sure how long he's going to be able to stay healthy. Maybe him splitting carries will be able to have him play a whole season.
And then the final thing that I remember noting from Colts training camp from today was the tight end position. And Dwayne Allen is back. They were talking about how great that he looked. He made a fantastic play. And to be fair, they said Kobe Fleener made a terrific one-handed catch as well. How do you see the tight end position? How do you see the targets going there?
Well, I think Dwayne Allen's going to get 99% of those targets in the tight end position. He's just a true athlete and receiver. He's a receiving tight end.
And he can block.
Yeah, he's fantastic. Watching him in college was absolutely terrific.
Yeah.
The Kobe Fleener filled in decently. I just don't think that they want him for that position. They're going to use a lot of two tight end sets this year, and I think that Dwayne Allen's going to be the guy that they do focus. I think Reggie Wayne's still going to be the head honcho there, and then I wouldn't be surprised if Dwayne Allen had just as many catches as someone like T.Y. Hilton this year.
Yeah, is it fair to say that Dwayne Allen is a sleeper? I mean, if you play fantasy football, you know how talented he is and what he can do, don't you?
Yeah, I wouldn't consider him a sleeper, but I know other people are just because he hasn't been able to put two seasons together more or less. So I think that he is not a sleeper, and I think that he's going to have possibly a breakout year for a tight end.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I'm a big fan of Dwayne Allen, and I definitely think that that he's going to have, if he can stay healthy, you're right, he is an athlete, and he's so fun to watch. I had an opportunity to see him in person in his rookie season, and I was raving about him all season long. I was like, this guy is the real deal. So disappointed when he got hurt and wasn't able to play last year, and I'm hopeful that he's able to stay healthy. LaRon Landry injured again. Is this guy a concern at this point?
Well, I mean, everyone's always concerned, but I mean, injuries are going to hurt your team each and every year. So, I mean, it's not really a surprise, but it's more of a shame.
Yeah, I think it's a shame too. Zach, what do you think? Is Trent Richardson going to be their bell cow? Is it going to be Vic Ballard? What do you think about their running back situation?
I think Trent Richardson fueled my nightmares and many other nightmares last year from fantasy owners because I had him as a keeper, and he was, he really wasn't that good his rookie year, but everybody kind of compared him to LaDainian Tomlinson. A lot of catches, low yards per carry his rookie year, and then he decided to go even lower. He was like, how low can you go? So I've already made the prediction that Ahmad Bradshaw is going to have 20 carries for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns in week 1. He's going to be the waiver wire wonder, and then he's going to get hurt the next week.
Okay.
They're going to be stuck in the running back by committee with Trent Richardson and Vic Mackey Ballard, and we'll see how that goes.
So you're not a Vic Ballard fan?
They stopped using him. Well, the thing is, he was just a mediocre talent, and then he had an ACL tear, so I don't know what else he'll be able to do. But then again, Trent Richardson doesn't seem to know how to play running back. He's like, Chris Johnson's like, dude, figure out how to find a hole. Come on, dude, So we'll see, but it's unusual. You have this great quarterback, and maybe why Luck is good is he doesn't just pepper one guy. So it's hard to tell who's going to be the guy at wide receiver. I do like Dwayne Allen. I don't know if he has a ton of upside, but then again, he could probably catch 8 to 10 touchdowns.
Yeah, I think that that's very realistic. I think that it is. Brad, what about you? How do you feel about the Colts running back situation and their tight end situation?
Just the fact that we're talking about 3 different guys says a lot about how bad that trade was. You're giving up a round pick for a guy that's then going to become part of a platoon with a guy that has feet made of plates and a guy who just tore his ACL last year. So it seems like Donald Brown leaving could actually end up being kind of a big deal. If Bradshaw can't stay healthy and Richardson can't find the hole and Pollard can't come back full strength, they may have trouble moving the ball on the ground, and that may let defenses stack back and try to make them beat them on the ground and just try to stop Luck. So it seems like it's a messy, sloppy running game right now. Maybe somebody steps up. Maybe Bradshaw stays healthy. He's a really talented guy, so if he can stay on the field, that might be the best thing for them. I like him in New York. As for the pass catching, Dwayne Allen's a personal favorite because I'm a Clemson fan.
Okay.
It's very painful to watch him go to the Colts because I root for any divisional guys. So at least we get Sammy Watkins also. But
yeah, Sammy Watkins is already making noise. I had a chance to talk with some Bills people on my Tuesday night show for NFL Female, and we were talking about how Sammy Watkins is already making noise.
Yeah, Dwayne Allen's a talented guy. He's one of those all-around kind of tight ends where he doesn't really have a whole lot of weaknesses. He may not be the highest guy either. He's kind of like what Zach Miller was able to do in Oakland for that one season. That type of guy where he's not gonna be a liability on the field in any way. He's a blocker. He's just kind of all around useful. Fleener seems like he's kind of this past tweener where he's got like the opposite of Jimmy Graham, where he's instead of a wide receiver in a tight end's body, he's a tight end in a wide receiver's body, but he just can't put it all together.
Hey Brad, you're cutting in and out a little bit. Why don't you go out and come back in and see if you don't have a little bit of a better connection. And while you do that, we'll go ahead and turn to the Texans because I do want to talk to you about the Jaguars. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Texans and let Brad come back in and see if we can't get his internet connection a little bit better. Because I know that he's got some great things to say about the Jaguars. You know, the Texans are just an interesting team this year. Nobody would have predicted that they would have only won 2 games. I want to forget that second game that they won against the Titans. They won 2 games. The last game, here comes Brad. The last game that they won was against the Tennessee Titans, an overtime game, and there you go. You're much better now, Brad. They have made wholesale changes, just like the Titans did. Zach and I didn't talk about the new coaching staff, but obviously it was implied. The Texans have a new coaching staff. They're going to be running new systems, although they do still expect to run the 3-4. Drafted Jadeveon Clowney, the number 1 overall selection. I think that I know that they have J.J. Watt and they have other good defensive players. I really think that Jadeveon Clowney can have an immediate impact for the Houston Texans. And I still think that he can be a candidate for the Defensive Rookie of the Year selection. What do you guys think? I'm going to start with you, Chris.
Are you asking about the draft, or sorry, I was looking up stuff on J.J. Watt.
I was talking about Jadeveon Clowney, and I said, and you can feel free to disagree with me, but I said that I think that he'll have an immediate impact and that he can still be so impactful that he could have a real shot at Defensive Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I mean, he has a real shot at being that because he is a playmaker. As far as the draft pick went, I wasn't real thrilled about it. And if he isn't the playmaker that the Texans are expecting, I wouldn't be surprised maybe if J.J. Watt exercised his contract and possibly left. That's what I was looking up when.
Oh, okay.
All
All right.
I was wondering where he was in his contract, and it's coming up at the end of this upcoming season. It looks like so. I mean, Clowney has a lot to play for here, and it's not just for him. If he wants to be on a good defensive team, he has to play well to keep JJ Watt. Also, I think that the defense is going to hold or keep them in games. However, they're going to be able to go against offenses like the Titans twice and the Jaguars. So I won't say that they're terrible offenses, but I will say that they will be able to pressure the quarterbacks that aren't as strong and be able to make possible plays.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. He could definitely make some noise when you consider what he's going to be facing in the division. Brad, what do you think? Can Jadeveon Clowney be the kind of impact player in his first season that would allow him to be the defensive rookie of the year?
Well, I kind of expect him to be that type of player. The real question is how much of an impact is that going to make on their team? Because I think a lot of media folks are really overestimating how good that team is. I mean, they were really bad last year. And, yeah, they had some bad injury luck, and, yeah, they had some just bad luck on the field in general, but they were not good at all. And even if you get all those injured guys back, even if you had a guy like Clowney, a guy like Lewis Nix, there's still only so much improving you're going to be able to do with that same group. And now you're taking out, I mean, their quarterback situation wasn't great, but it's not like Ryan Fitzpatrick's going to come in and make things happen and turn that back into a playoff team all on his own. And Arian Foster's a year older. So Clowney's like a generational talent is what some people refer to him as, and he's a super talented player. He's in a great system for him to make an impact. I could see him getting double-digit sacks. It kind of depends whether they use him as a 3-4 end or as an outside linebacker. That's kind of a weird system. Yeah, I can see him moving around a bunch, but that's kind of a weird system for that kind of player because he seems to me like the kind of guy you would want to line up on the ground on the edge and let him go after the quarterback. But they're either going to have him standing up or he's going to be lined up over the guard or over the tackle, and he's probably going to get double teamed a lot.
Yeah, you mentioned it, so I want to talk about it and get the other guys to weigh in. Arian Foster. A lot of hype about Mr. Foster. He's back. He's healthy. He's going to be a legitimate option in fantasy football. Are you buying the Kool-Aid or not?
Are you asking me?
Yes, I'm asking you.
Okay, well, I think running backs have a very limited lifespan. And you're talking to somebody who just watched Maurice Jones-Drew basically go through the same career arc. Was a star player for several years in the middle of his 20s, and then as you get near the end, as running backs get near the end of their 20s, they usually seem like they slow down, and maybe they don't seem like they slowed down if you look at them run on specific highlight plays. People like to point out, look at how fast he was on this, 30-yard run or something like that. But if you look at the season as a whole, their yards per carry is down. Maybe they'll drop a couple more balls. They won't get in the end zone quite as much. Maybe they can't take the carries as well. And Foster's had all those injury problems as well. So I'm not buying him as a star running back anymore, and I don't think he's going to ever get back to that level. He's pretty good at proving people wrong, so I could very easily be proving me wrong on that count. But just given the way that running backs usually age and the way that that type of player usually ages, I see him kind of dialing it back a little. He probably won't have those huge yards per carry outputs that he's put up in the past. He's probably more of a 3-4 yards in the cloud of dust kind of guy at this point in his career, which is still a solid player, but I don't think that's the kind of guy that takes you from 2-14 to the playoffs.
He's being drafted wildly all over the place in fantasy football. Some people believing, some people don't believe. Zach, do you believe in Arian Foster?
Well, I probably believe in him when he's playing the Titans because he's torn him up his whole career. And he is a UT
really
guy.
has.
I mean, come on. Who loves... I don't know. Maybe there's something to be said for the guy who's still got that undrafted, chip on his shoulder. He wants to prove himself. Although the injury last year was kind of like a back injury, so I'm not really sure.
He had surgery. He had back surgery.
What the usual recovery is for that. And, we do have the age issue. Well, he doesn't have a ton of tread. I mean, he's had, 3 or 4 really strong years. I don't know about a second-round pick, but it is interesting to think of the team having the like 8 in the box and 12 in the box because you're not really worried about Ryan Fitzpatrick. Was it the Amish rifle, as he's known? The game breaker for other teams occasionally. So I don't know about him as a second-round guy. I think he'll come back, but you have that worry that he'd get hurt, and then you're going to have someone like Andre Brown, leading the team. And nobody wants to see
there's
that.
not much behind Arian Foster, and so that's the thing. He's going to get his carries. He's going to get his touches.
Yeah, they're going to have like the 6 tight end offense. I think that's what Bill O'Brien's going for.
Yeah. What do you think, Chris? Are you buying into Arian Foster or not?
Well, you asked earlier if you're buying his Kool-Aid, and I'm buying all that Kool-Aid I can get. I think that he's not going to be the numbers that everyone's expecting.
Right.
He's not going to be those, putting up 220-yard games. No, I don't think that's going to happen. But I do think he's going to be able to post up 100 to 120 yards average and have a couple catches and possibly 1 or 2 touchdowns. I think he's their option. They're going to feed him the ball. Back surgery. I looked it up, and it was just a microscopic lumbar discectomy surgery.
It was microsurgery.
Yeah, so the report I just read is that it wasn't as serious as people were making it sound. However, surgery, and it's still a little worrisome. I like him, and I like his value currently in fantasy. He's going at the end of the first, sometimes the beginning of the second, so I'm okay with that pick there, especially where people are going wide receiver earlier and earlier. I'd rather go ahead and if I could get Arian Foster as my second running back, I'm totally happy.
All right.
I think that he has opportunity, and carries are everything when it comes to fantasy. So I like him. There isn't anyone else I want on that team. You're not going to handcuff Arian Foster in fantasy because if you want one of those other guys, you go ahead. I'd rather gamble on someone else personally.
I completely agree with you, Chris. I completely agree. In fact, I said virtually the same thing. Even if you don't buy the Kool-Aid, you know that he's going to. He's the guy. They're banking on him. He is. He's the guy. Zach, I didn't get a chance to ask you. We'll let you finish up our Texans thing, and then we're going to turn to the Jaguars. Jadeveon Clowney, can he be that impact player and be the Defensive Rookie of the Year?
Well, I think so. He had surgery, so you got to worry about maybe having trouble getting acclimated. But with him and J.J. Watt in the defensive line, that's a pretty good move. Although it does frustrate, IDP fantasy people because you're thinking, he's going to be one of those stud defensive ends, and then he's going to be a linebacker. You're like, oh, come on, really? I still think he can get 10 to 12 sacks and should be a good player. You can say they were terrible last year, but they lost a ton of close games. And
they did.
I think they had that kind of cloud over their head toward the second half of the year, like, we're just going to lose a close game at the end, and they always did. So we'll see if the new coaching staff can turn them around this year.
Yeah, I agree with you. They just it was just like a star-crossed year. Their coach collapses on the sideline. Their quarterback and their star wide receiver get into and Andre Johnson, outside of Cortland Finnegan, never gets into it with anybody. He's so even-keeled, and he and Schaub get into it. And we didn't get a chance to really talk about the Andre Johnson situation, but and that's something that they're going to have to deal with as well. It's been very much kind of an interesting offseason for them. Jaguars, Brad. Chad Henne looks like he's going to be the guy. You and I talked about this. I still think that they're going to get into training camp, look at big arm Blake Bortles, and be all like drooling and like, we want to start this guy. Is there a legitimate competition at quarterback?
I think they want to play it that way, but realistically, they don't want there to be one. They would like Bortles to start the season on the sidelines. I just read something today that was saying the Jags are focused on trying to get Bortles' footwork all sorted out because he has arm strength in his body, but he doesn't necessarily show it on the field because his footwork is so sloppy. And so your footwork is kind of something you need to get sorted out before you have Jadeveon Clowney, J.J. Watt trying to sandwich you from either side. So that seems like what they have in mind is that Henne will start the season. I wouldn't be surprised if Bortles hits the field the second they're eliminated, but I don't see it happening any earlier than the bye week. I'd be very surprised if Bortles is on the field barring an injury before the bye.
All right. When is their bye week this year?
I believe it's 9 again. We keep ending up with the straight in the middle of the season week 9 bye.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that that's definitely a situation to watch. The last time you and I talked, I don't believe Jason Babin had been released. Well, he had been released the first time and re-signed. Now he's released. Is there going to be legitimate competition at the defensive line, or are they set there? Where do you see the big training camp battles coming down?
Well, Gus Bradley's all about competition, so legitimately he is up for anybody beating anybody out. So if any guy on the roster beats out the guy in front of him, he's going to start the guy that earned that job. Doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter what your name is. And if it makes more sense, say Red Bryant gets beat out by Aubrey Jones in training camp, and Aubrey Jones is clearly the better player. Bryant's just not quite there. He makes enough money that they would probably consider cutting him. But I don't expect that to happen, but just as an example. I think one of the spots that you're going to see a lot of rotation at is defensive line. They have a lot of bodies up there, so there's some competition there, but it's almost competition to see what percentage of the snaps they're going to get, because they're all going to be on the field a lot. Derek Marks played way too many snaps last year, so that's why they brought in Ziggy Hood. He's going to be playing in a role that suits him better than the one he played in Pittsburgh. In Jacksonville, he's just going to be expected to penetrate, which is what Marks did last year. And then Bryant is going to be playing at the essentially as a 3-4 defensive end, even though we're not running a 3-4. And then Tyson Alualu will rotate in with him on some downs. So there's going to be a lot of just switching up on the defensive line. The nickel corner slot, I think, is going to have some competition, because while Will Blackman's probably the favorite right now, Mike Harris has been an option there. And then they've just got a lot of young guys. Rashad Reynolds, they picked up as an undrafted free agent. I think they really like his ability to play in the slot, and I think he's going to get a shot to get some snaps at that spot. As far as Jackson, the absolute the biggest competition that anybody's going to see is the wide receivers.
Yeah, I want to talk about the wide receivers, but before I want to stop you. Before I get there, we're going to finish with the wide receivers. You see this right here? It is full of Toby Gerhart Kool-Aid, which I am drinking every single drop of. Am I legitimately okay drinking all this Toby Gerhart Kool-Aid?
Well, I'll ask you this. Think of the worst legitimate NFL starting running back you can and give him 320 touches. Is that somebody you would take? Now give him...
Yeah.
Now,
I've taken him in every single league that I've drafted in so far, which
so
is only 2.
Is the absolute worst case scenario is that he's the worst you could possibly have, but he's still going to get tons of touches. They're going to feed him all day long. Jordan Todman is clearly a change of pace kind of guy. Denard Robinson can't the ball, so he's not going to get a ton of touches. I know they like Storm Johnson, but he's not ready to handle a load. I don't think he's really very good in pass protection yet. Gerhart is an every down back, and I think they see him as a guy that's going to get this is his chance to prove he can carry the load. He's got a contract that is set up to where if he's not worth it, they can just dump him after the season. So it's essentially one of those one-year prove-it deals with a couple of dummy years tacked onto the end. I think he's going to be worth it. If I'm start doing a dynasty startup league this year, and I'm going to be targeting him myself. Not as a super long-term type of guy, but that seems like the kind of player that is going to be overlooked by people who look too much at offensive line play, or they'll look at the receivers on the team and the quarterback and figure they're never going to have any room to run. I still think he's going to put up solid numbers. I don't think he'll score double-digit touchdowns, but he might get 6 to 8. He's going to get all the goal line carries. He's got a lot of opportunity, and I think he's talented enough to make something of it. His combine stats are eerily similar to Steven Jackson, so he's not the stereotypical slow white running back. I know there's that kind of stigma, and everybody thinks that any white running back.
Yeah. No, I love him. I loved him coming out of college. He got stuck behind Adrian Peterson in Minnesota. And even at that, when he got a chance to to get on the field. He averaged like 6.5 yards per carry. So, I mean, it was something ungodly. And if you watched him, I mean, he's a talented guy. I'm really excited about what he's going to be able to do, finally being the guy down there in Jacksonville. The Jacksonville Jaguars, what in the world is in your water down there? Justin Blackman, I forget how many arrests he's had. He just got arrested again. Ace Sanders suspended for 4 games. What's the deal?
Well, we had a legitimate star receiver since Jimmy Smith left, so it's been a while. I don't know what Blackman's got more of a life issue than a football issue at this point. Chad Henne was just interviewed, I believe, yesterday, and he was saying that he's hoping he can get his life sorted out. They're more worried about him not spending his 20s, 30s in jail, and trying to get him back on the field. I almost wonder if the reason they're not cutting him is to give him that last kind of rope of, this is what you're throwing away, and let him know that it's not totally gone. You can still redeem yourself, because I know that some people will, if they don't have that last lifeline, they'll say, screw it, I'm just going off the deep end and not care what happens to him. He seems like he's kind of moving in that direction already. From what I've heard, most of the players aren't even hearing from him. He's not staying in contact with the team.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Kind of a ghost. So he's not really a factor on the football field, but I hope as a person he can get his life turned around, stay out of jail, get help for his issues, and just live a productive life at least. I mean, I don't want to see anybody spending their life getting DUIs and drug arrests and stuff like that.
It's really sad. I'm hoping that he can as well. What's up with Ace Sanders?
We don't exactly know what happened with Sanders. It was kind of an impromptu press conference, and he announced that he was probably going to be suspended for 4 games. He has some personal stuff he's trying to deal with. From what I heard, he was getting counseling regarding dealing with family issues. So that seems like a really personal type of issue that is we may not ever get major details. And honestly, if it's a personal family thing, I'm not sure we should get any details.
Yeah.
Hopefully something that they in their family. What him being suspended does is gives a couple other guys an opportunity to show that they're worth a roster spot. I don't think Sanders' spot is in jeopardy, but I do think that he's giving guys a shot to make something happen. I know Camden Doss, the receiver signed, I believe he was on the Ravens last year. He's going to be the primary punt returner probably for the first 4 weeks, unless he doesn't make the roster. So he's got a chance to show that he deserves to keep that job, even with Sanders back, and to keep a receiver slot. I know the University of Miami receiver Alan Hearns that they picked up as an undrafted free agent. They're a big fan of Hearns, and so he might have a shot to make some plays and see if he can cut into Sanders' time when he comes back on the field. They have a lot of talent at the receiver position for once. It's just all really young. So
luckily for them, they drafted 2 wide receivers this year. Big fan of Allen Robinson. Marcus Lee, not as much, but obviously a talented guy. They're going to get a lot of opportunity to make plays, don't you think?
I think they're going to get a lot of snaps on the field, and especially if they're playing a lot of close games, you may see a lot of Allen Robinson blocking also. I think the Jags' objective is to play a lot of low-scoring football games, similar to when Seattle won that division.
Well, that's where Gus Bradley comes from, that kind of tradition. We're hearing that Denard X, is catching the football a lot better. Is he going to get worked into the offense more this year or not?
I believe that's the plan, but like we had discussed last time, he's got to hold the football. You can't keep putting the ball on the ground and expect to stay in the league. And catching passes wasn't even the main issue; it was fumbling the ball, because he's essentially just a running back at this point. I know they had that position X, offensive weapon nation. He's not doing that anymore. He's a running back. They asked him to prepare as a running back. learn to hold the ball as a running back, focus on one thing, and maybe it'll make it easier for him to succeed, not having to try to learn a whole bunch of different things, and instead just these are running back plays, you hold the ball, find your holes. I think he's still got tons of upside, but he's also got a lot of learning to do, and we saw a couple of flashes of it last year, but honestly, it was mostly just a lost season. So if he can't
Yeah,
make
it really
a difference,
was.
he's probably done. So I'm
Yeah, it really was.
hoping.
Yeah. I hope so too. I think that he's a talented guy, and I would like to see him succeed. Chris, am I right or wrong, Chris, that I'm drinking all this Toby Gerhart Kool-Aid?
Oh, you're pounding it, and it's awesome. I love.
I am. I really am.
Yeah, I mean, why would you not? When you're talking about a guy who really will get 20 to 30 carries a game, how can you not preach and love this guy? It's exciting to see, especially his ADP in fantasy drafts is so low still, and I don't get it.
I know.
You talk about a guy who's
I
going to
don't get
the
it
ball.
either.
I mean, you put someone I'll even put Zach out there.
I got speed, I got moves.
30 carries a game. I'm still betting you're going to get 50 yards, possibly a touchdown. So that's what I'm saying.
No, I couldn't. No.
I was begging the Titans to pick him up in the offseason, and obviously they didn't. Before I turn to Zach and get it.
They don't.
Before I ask Zach about it, Chris, I want to get your thoughts on the two their wide receiver situation. The rookie wide receivers, if between Marcus Lee and Allen Robinson, who do you think will have the biggest impact this season?
Marquise Lee, 100%. And the reason I say that is because he is a huge playmaker. Watching what he did in college was absolutely phenomenal. Yes, he had a down year. I think it was his junior year, but his sophomore year was absolutely brilliant. He was huge, and I think that he can do that, especially with Chad Henne at the helm. He's going to be able to throw deep passes to him and let him really be vertical on the field. I like Marquise Lee, and I think he could have kind of a breakout year, but I don't think he's going to be breakout. I think he's going to have a nice rookie season, and people are going to be talking about him more and more, and he will be on fantasy teams by the end of the season.
All right. I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going to go with Allen Robinson. We're going to see who's correct as the season goes on, and maybe we'll make a little bet off camera and make it kind of interesting. Zach knows I drink the Toby Gerhart Kool-Aid. Zach, am I tripping or not?
I'm sad that nobody mentioned Cecil eat my shorts. I mean, come on. Everybody's forgotten about him.
I love Cecil shorts.
Well, Toby Gerhart's had to have had the biggest jump in fantasy value over the past few months than any player. He was an 8th round pick a few months ago, and now he's sneaking up to the 4th. I saw him in the 3rd round in an NFL 10. So you wonder when the value isn't there, but you can get a couple of receivers early and get him in the 4th round. You're probably feeling pretty good. Because it is about volume as running back. I mean, get those carries. I mean, even Trent Richardson might be valuable if he gets 20 carries, but he probably won't.
You're right.
Zach and his Trent Richardson hate. Okay. You like Cecil Shorts. I like Cecil Shorts. I mean, he's going to be their best wide receiver option. I don't think that anybody disagrees with that. I'm really kind of sad that we ran out of time. We didn't get to talk about Mercedes Lewis, who I thought has been terribly underutilized down there in Jacksonville. But maybe we'll do another show here soon, and we can talk about him, because I really, really like him, and I would like to see the Jaguars finally get him involved. But the rookie wide receivers, Zach, who do you like better?
I don't know. It's hard to say because the scout people really seem to love Allen Robinson. Maybe it's the tall receiver talk,
I love him.
And it's hard to say about Marquise Lee. He had a great sophomore year, and then he wasn't so good his junior year. So what is he? But they're going to get a lot of opportunity. They're going to get on the field a lot, and the amazing mustache of Chad Henne will lead them forward. Almost as good as the owner's mustache, but not quite.
Yeah.
A couple things real quick.
Sure.
We had last time about Lee. Part of the reason his junior season was so much worse than the previous year is because he spent most of the year injured, and he was playing through an injury. So I think in terms of actual talent, what you saw his first 2 years in college is more along the lines of what you can hope to see in the NFL if he can stay healthy, obviously. And that's why I like him more than Robinson, because he's more versatile and he's more explosive. Robinson seems more like a Ruben Randle-y kind of guy, which is not terrible, but also I'm not sure that that's a game breaker type of receiver, whereas I think Lee has the potential to be a blow-the-top off of defenses or catch a screen and take it to the house kind of guy. The other thing I had was a bold prediction, and that is that I am predicting that Toby Gerhart will outscore Arian Foster in average fantasy per week.
Wow.
All right. You know what? Okay. Yeah, I can't disagree with that. I really can't. The thing, Lee to me is your kind of your feast or famine kind of guy, whereas Allen Robinson is that big, and this is just what I prefer: the big, strong, tall, wide receiver that you're kind of your go-to wide receiver that's going to win matchups with defensive backs, and that's why I tend to trend toward those kind of guys. But we'll see. I mean, I certainly don't think that Lee is awful. I'm not saying that at all, and I think that he's going to be every bit the playmaker, hopefully every bit the playmaker that the Jaguars want him to be. Just real quick, do you think, Brad, that they're going to finally get Mercedes Lewis involved?
I think that's the plan, and I don't know why they haven't used him properly in the past, but he's huge. And
he's a beast.
The correct way to use the guy is you throw the ball about 10 feet in the air and let him go get it. Because there are not very many.
Yeah, I mean, it's inconceivable to me.
You're there. So I'm going to finally use him in the red zone like he did the year he had double-digit touchdowns a couple years ago. I think that's the plan anyway. Part of the reason he had such a down year last year was because the tackle situation was so dire. Jokel was injured, and then Monroe got traded, and they spent half the season with Cameron Bradfield at left tackle. So that was part of the reason they had to leave Lewis in to help block, so they didn't get the defensive end that they played against. Pastor.
Yeah, he kind of became the Algie Crumpler kind of guy. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the hour always. What's that?
Algie, too soon.
I wasn't expecting to hear that name.
I'm sorry, Zach. Yeah, I mean, they definitely had to use him to help protect against that offensive line. The hour always goes by so fast. I want to thank you guys for joining me. It's been a lot of fun. Zach, I'm going to start with you, my Wednesday night partner. Tell everybody who you are and where they can find you, and shout out your new gig.
Hi. Zach_Law on Twitter. Do the Ask You Fantasy Football Expert every week, and expanding my writing repertoire on fantasysports.org. We're just going to be doing all kinds of talk about all kinds of sites. Yeah, I even had Regan of Fake Pigskin on this week to do a chat. I always like to catch up with people I've not talked to in a while.
I was just getting ready to ask you about your podcast and to tell everybody about that, but you went ahead and took care of that.
Well, it's unofficial, you know. I'm trying to make it a regular thing. It's been unregular. Is that a good word? But yeah, there's nothing better than the going for two. You know, Sharona, whenever she's not going to Dave & Buster's, we can do that show every week.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Chris, tell everybody where they can find you.
Sure. You can find me at fakepigskin.com. I do writings there. I dabble a little bit into DFS stuff, so you'll see that as the season gets closer. You can find me on Twitter at @TheGrizzlyBeard, and I also co-host a podcast at the 3 and Out podcast. Real quick, I know this is completely off topic, but we really could see Justin Blackmon playing this year. By the way, Ray Rice got sentenced today. So, I mean, I would be surprised if Blackmon played.
Don't get me started on Ray Rice. Don't get me started on Ray Rice. No. Sharona's in a good mood. She's happy. She's in her happy place. La, 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 la. No, and I want to say this. I really appreciate Chris joining me. The guys at the Fake Pigskin are fantastic. If you have not checked out their website and all the fantastic work that they're doing, you really should. You're missing out. They're a great group of guys, and they do really good work, and you should get on that stat.
We get her around.
Brad, tell everybody where they can find you.
Well, you can find me on the internet on Twitter, California Jag, and I also tweet Jaguar stuff at Jaguars blog. I'm probably going to mostly stick with game day stuff on that account. And you can also literally find me in Northern California at my house, but I'm not telling you guys where that is.
We're going to have to get you, we need to get you a gig. We're going to work on that, Brad, because you've got a lot of great knowledge about the Jags, and we need to get you back writing about them. I'm Sharona. You can follow me on Twitter at Sports by Sharona. You can catch me tomorrow night on the Extra Point, the Friday night version, talking NFC South training camp preview. Catch me every morning, 10 o'clock a.m., Central Standard Time, 7:30 Yahoo Sports on Game Over with Vashti and Sharona. And be sure to check out the National Gridiron Network, www.nationalgridironnetwork.com. I want to thank all the guys for joining us. Thank you for joining me, and we'll be back tomorrow night. Have a great Thursday night, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah.